and the Honorable Steve Bannon. This panel is moderated by the American Conservative Union's chairman, the Honorable Matt Schlapp.
Thanks for being here. You bet. All right, guys, let's take a seat. All right. CPAC is known for having important moments, and I think it's safe to say by a full room and just a couple of cameras that this is one of those moments. And I think the first thing that would be appropriate after 30 days of running a continual sprint is to thank these two guys for what they've been doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hey, on that front, I also think it's a perfect moment to thank all of you for helping us elect what will be one of the greatest presidents that ever served this country.
All right.
And it's because of your work that he made it happen.
And Matt,
great.
I want to thank you for finally inviting me to CPAC.
Yeah, there's no, what was the name of the
uninvited.
The uninvited.
Yes. I know there are many alumni out here in the audience.
I didn't like the uninvited. Here's what we decided to do at CPAC with the uninvited. We decided to say that everybody's a part of our conservative family.
That's right.
And that's what Donald Trump has done to so many of us around the country politically. And you guys have put together an amazing operation. You know, I know you all know this, but the last time a president came to CPAC in his first year, it was Ronald Reagan,
wow.
St. Ronald, in 1981. And you've put together this, the president has put together the most conservative cabinet we've ever seen, according to our CPAC ratings. And I think a few of us are pretty happy about what looks like is going to happen on the Supreme Court, too. So it's,
yeah.
Now let me ask you two, I'm looking in the back of the room as well, but let me ask you two, we all read...
Is that the opposition party?
Yes, that is. Let me ask you two, we read a lot about you two.
That's all good.
But I bet not all of it's accurate. I bet there's some things that don't get written correctly. Let me ask each one of you, what's the biggest misconception about what's going on in the Donald Trump White House?
Well, in regard to us two, I think the biggest misconception is everything that you're reading. We share an office suite together. We're basically together from 6:30 in the morning until about 11 o'clock at night.
I have a little thing called the war room. He has a fireplace with nice sofas.
And it's actually something that you all have helped build, which is when you bring together, and what this election showed, and what President Trump showed, and let's not kid ourselves. I mean, I can talk about data and ground game, and Steve can talk about big ideas, but the truth of the matter is, Donald Trump, President Trump, brought together the party and the conservative movement. And I've got to tell you, if the party and the conservative movement are together, similar to Steve and I, it can't be stopped. And President Trump was the one guy, he was the one person, and I can say it after overseeing 16 people kill each other. It was Donald Trump that was able to bring this party and this movement together. And Steve and I know that, and we live it every day. Our job is to get the agenda of President Trump through the door and on pen and paper.
But we've known it since August 15th, and I think if you look at, the opposition party and how they portrayed the campaign, how they portrayed the transition, and now they're portraying the administration, it's always wrong. I mean, on the very first day that Kellyanne and I started, We reached out to Reince, Sean Spicer, Katie. It's the same team that, every day was grinding away on the campaign, the same team that did the transition. And if you remember, the campaign was the most chaotic, by the media's description, most chaotic, most disorganized, most unprofessional, had no earthly idea what they were doing. And then you saw them all crying and weeping that night on the 8th and the reason it worked is President Trump. I mean, Trump had those ideas, had that energy, had that vision that could galvanize a team around him of disparate. Look, we're a coalition. A lot of people think, have strong beliefs about different things, but we understand that you can come together to win, and we understood that from August 15th, and we never had a doubt, and Donald Trump never had a doubt that he was going to win. And I think that is the power of this movement.
And on top of that, first of all, President Trump laid out his vision, was it 4 or 5 years ago here at CPAC?
That's right.
And it was that vision. It's nothing different. If you go back and watch the tape of President Trump 4 or 5 years ago, that was the Trump agenda. One of the things I used to say all the time, and Governor Walker and everyone gets sick of me saying it, but I think that President Trump found it, which was what this country, what all of us were starving for the whole time, because we're so sick of politics and politicians. In spite of the fact that we love being here, we actually hate politics. But what we were starving for was somebody real, somebody genuine, somebody that was actually who he said he was. And the media attacked us on the campaign. Remember, attacked me, you can't spend the money on Trump, go give it to the Senate. Attacked us on the transition. President Trump put in the best cabinet in the history of cabinets, I think. Now, I feed ridiculous stories. And all we do every day, and all President Trump does every day, is hit his agenda every single day. Whether it's TPP, whether it's deregulation, whether it's Neil Gorsuch, whatever it is, his promise is coming through every day.
He's even leaving bathrooms alone. That's kind of a nice, refreshing thing for a lot of people as well.
We happen to think it's a state issue.
Of course.
But I think let's go back to that point that Reince made for a second. President Trump, when he was running, he made and this is the other thing that the mainstream media or opposition party never caught, is that if you want to see the Trump agenda, it's very simple. It was all in the speeches. He went around to these rallies, but those speeches had tremendous amount of content in them, right? I happen to believe, and I think many others do, he's probably the greatest public speaker in those large arenas since William Jennings Bryan. This was galvanizing. Remember, we didn't have any money. Hillary Clinton, these guys had over $2 billion. We had a couple of $100 million. It was those rallies and those speeches. All he's doing right now is he's laid out an agenda with those speeches, with the promises he made. And our job every day is just to execute on that, is to simply get a path to how those get executed. And he's maniacally focused on that. And I think that's one of the powers of the transition, where many, many people try to come in and try to convince President Trump, hey, you won on this, but this is what you want to do. And he's like, no. I promise the American people this, and this is the plan we're going to execute on. And Reince, and by the way, that's why you've seen the executive orders, the Supreme Court, the way he's gone through the Supreme Court, and by the way, the other 102 judges that we're eventually going to pick. It's just a methodical, and that's what the mainstream media won't report. Just like they were dead wrong on the chaos of the campaign, and just like they were dead wrong in the chaos of the transition, they are absolutely dead wrong about what's going on today, because we have a team that's just grinding it through on what President Donald Trump promised the American people. And the mainstream media better understand something. All of those promises are going to be implemented.
That's awesome. It's been a... Steve, you're a really likable guy. You should do this more often.
Not so bad.
He's not so bad.
Most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
What are 30 days of action? And you guys have touched on some of that action. Each one of you, tell me the one or two things that have happened in the last 30 days that you think are the most critical. And what is the one thing that you just, like you said, Steve, maniacally focused, that has just got to happen early in the administration to really turn this country around? So start first with the first 30 days, then what's that focus after that?
So there's a lot that's happened in the first 30 days. Whether, you look at the world order and some of the things that are going on that I think will be dealt with soon. But the first thing I think is Neil Gorsuch, for a couple things. Number one, We're not talking about a change over a 4-year period. We're talking about a change of potentially 40 years of law, number one. But more important than that, it established trust. It established that President Trump is a man of his word. We always knew that. But when he said, here's 20 names on a piece of paper back in July, remember? And he said, I'm going to pick my judge out of these 20 people that are on this piece of paper. And he did it. That's number one. Because Neil Gorsuch represents a conservative, represents the type of judge that has the vision of Donald Trump, and it fulfills the promise that he made to all of you and to all Americans across the country. Second thing, deregulation. What hasn't been talked about a lot is that President Trump signed an order that puts in place a constant deregulatory form within the federal government. And what it says is for every regulation presented for passage, that cabinet secretary has to identify 2 that person would eliminate. And that's a big deal. And then lastly, immigration. Immigration. Protecting the sovereignty of the United States. Putting a wall on the southern border. Making sure that criminals are not part of our process. These are all things that 80% of Americans agree with, and these are all things that President Trump is doing within 30 days.
Steve.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think if you look at the lines of work, I kind of break it out into 3 verticals or 3 buckets. The first is kind of national security and sovereignty, and that's your intelligence, the Defense Department, Homeland Security. The second line of work is what I refer to as economic nationalism, and that is Wilbur Ross at Commerce, Steve Mnuchin at Treasury, Lighthizer at Trade, Peter Navarro, Stephen Miller, these people that are rethinking how we're going to reconstruct our trade arrangements around the world. The third, broadly, line of work is what is deconstruction of the administrative state. And if you... So I think the 3 most important things, I think one of the most pivotal moments in modern American history was his immediate withdrawal from TPP. That got us out of a trade deal and let our sovereignty come back to ourselves. The people, the mainstream media don't get this, but we're already working in consultation with the Hill. People are starting to think through a whole raft of amazing and innovative bilateral relationships, bilateral trading relationships with people that will reposition America in the world as a fair trading nation and start to bring jobs, high value added manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America.